Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Novelty Podcast. Today we're going to talk all about communication. And communication and language is a really interesting topic, I feel. And I feel that way because there really is no true, widely accepted theory of how we started talking, how we started communicating with each other. There's lots of different theories out there, and really it's anyone's guess. What do you think, Matt?
Well, there are a few theories that I'm looking at right here.
Yeah.
And they have really funny names.
Poo-poo, ting-ting, ding-ding.
There's no ting-ting, but there is a poo-poo, actually, believe it or not. There's the bow wow theory, also known as the cuckoo theory.
Cuckoo.
The guy naming this must have just had a hell of a time. Saw early words... basically, it's early words were imitations of cries of beasts and birds, mimicking animals, probably for hunting.
Definitely.
And that kind of stuff. The poo-poo theory is the idea that language was triggered by pain, pleasure, surprise,
Ow,
and that kind of stuff. So, like, like a grunt, like, ooh, ouch, your instinctive reaction there. The ding-dong theory is that all things have a vibrating natural resonance, echoed somehow by man in his earliest words. And then the yo-he-ho theory is the basically that language emerged from collective rhythmic labor, an attempt to synchronize muscular effort. So like when you're at the gym and you're pumping iron, you kind of grunt and that sort of stuff.
I think the professor or the scientist, the linguist, whomever came up with this fantastic stuff, he had a hell of a time pitching it to his colleagues. Like, all right, so today we're going to talk about the poo-poo theory. I'm sure he had a hell of a time.
I wonder where he's from. I'll figure that out. Oh, he's no. I'll figure that out. The ta-ta theory, which is the last one that's listed here, is that humans made the earliest words by tongue movements that manual gestures, rendering them audible. And then I know of another theory that's not listed here, but do you know what glossolalia is? Glossolalia is language without meaning, and for somebody to kind of get a idea of what this is, you've probably heard of praying in tongues. That a lot of Christians, a lot of Christians, but some Christians do that, but it didn't originate from Christianity. It's just a natural thing that we can do. You can easily just make sounds and things that mean nothing. And so this theory is that if language was originally a form of entertainment between species that just kind of do stuff to kind of laugh, and
like babies,
like today we have entertainment. Today we laugh and we cry and I don't know, that kind of stuff, like babies, like you just said.
Like babies make noises and they entertain themselves with the goo goo gaga. I think it's kind of like the same premise, which I could get behind any of those, really.
I like that one. I can see that one because we like to consume and stimulate our senses.
In the end, I think it could be a myriad of all of them. I could see
just a combination of all these things.
Emotional responses, just doing it for fun, mimicking our surroundings. I think they all have some merit with it.
And it's amazing that we turned these little simple things into the crazy words that we have today.
Yeah, I mean everything we're saying right now in this podcast
came from
all been made up. It's these words mean nothing but what meaning we give to them, which is really interesting for me, at least. Another thing that I find really interesting is the fact that for most languages you can trace them back to one language origin. And what's really interesting is that we have so many different languages: English, Spanish, French, all that different stuff, right? And some people theorize that there is what's called a proto-language, meaning that all of our languages have originated from one source.
Yeah.
Other people disagree with that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I could see it looking kind of like a family tree.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, like it starts like this, these two split off into these split off into these. It's like,
Exactly.
you know, English and Spanish, and these languages come from Latin. And then there's other ones that come from another base language. And I could see it being like that. What's the argument against that?
The argument against it is that there were multiple, what they're called proto-languages, which are parent languages. Instead of just one, it's theorized that there were multiple different settlements of early life, early humanity in different parts of the globe. Mm-hmm. And each started their own language, developed their own way to communicate. And that there are, instead of one, just multiple across the globe.
Yeah, like as if there was humans all over different places.
Yeah.
And they all kind of came up with their own ideas of what to name things.
And we know that, based on, and we could trace a lot of language back to like a root language, like you said, like Latin. And it's really, and we know that it's based on, when these hunter-gatherer groups split up, based on their geographical location and their surroundings, that has been what has developed different languages.
Okay.
Which is really interesting to me, but I don't know. What do you think that there could be one original language that everything has all branched off to, or?
Yeah, I think so. Just because, like, when you look at the origin of humanity, everything points to Africa.
Sure.
And for our species, there's a bunch of different other kinds of species that are similar to us. There was the Neanderthals, and actually, there was one species that died out about 13,000 years ago, I believe. I can't remember the exact name from them, but they were somewhere on an Asian island, and they were these really short tool-using primates that were really similar to how we are today, and they only died out 13,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But all those other ones besides us have died out. So I can see it how we all came from one place, and there were other ones that branched out to other places. Maybe they moved out too early, you know what I mean? And they weren't ready to adapt to that environment.
And that's why
they died out, and then we were slower to progress, and now we're the one that survived.
Sure.
And we developed language the way that we did.
Yeah, I think what's also awesome about language is, at least in my opinion, we always had the tools to unlock it. Mm-hmm. It just, we had to go through our trials and tribulations and react to our environment.
Yeah.
In order to unlock language mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So, a common question is, do you think the physical ability to speak came first, or the mental ability to speak?
Well, you need the physical ability in order to do anything. But to develop language itself, you would have to have the mental capacity to do so. And modern humans have been around since 100,000 years ago. We've had the brain capacity that we have today.
Yeah.
But nothing is recorded. We have no recorded history. Before, like 2,000, 3,000 years ago, everything gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
When you go further back.
Exactly.
I think they would probably be, in order for the development of language, because you'd have to have the brain capacity, because people can ooh, ah, ah all day, but to organize it in a way.
The argument would be that the ooh, ah, ahs, they would then spark a part of the brain that would say, I can relate these to certain tasks, certain activities, and that. But I think
they have to have that in there.
Too. You know, you got to
mean?
have the brain power in order to say ooh, ah, ah.
Because we have chimpanzees. They make sound. All kinds of animals make sounds today.
Yeah,
that could possibly turn into language.
Sure.
But they don't have the brain capacity to do so. So they have the ability, they just they can't organize it into language.
That's another one that I think is really interesting. You see a lot of animals, they have their own methods of talking, some very intriguing, but we're the only
the dolphins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And was it the squid, the octopi?
Well, theirs is a little different. Theirs is a method of communication that is visual. So
just like different methods, but we're the only species to actually have a written language, which is so immense. And I mean, that brings us into written language, which is the stuff that we can analyze, because that's when recorded history started to
We see the
occur.
cave paintings and
exactly,
and that sort of stuff.
So I really like looking at ancient languages, and it was really interesting to see how the earliest forms of writing were symbols. And then it evolved, the symbols evolved into alphabetical
Letters.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for more or less, yes. And I just think that's super intriguing for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think it's called Tassili and Ahir. Yes, Tassili and Ahir. It's a place in Africa that there's a lot of really cool cave paintings, or not, they're like rock art.
Yeah.
And let's see, where is this place? It's in southeastern Algeria, western Libya, and northern Niger. So, yeah, it's this place where there's all these different cave paintings, and they have the way they depict humans is really strange. And they have images of giraffes and things that people have perceived as deities, and then there's also the hieroglyphics that you see in Egypt.
Yeah.
And that's the one that people have tried to decode for a long time, because it can be seen as a form of writing almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a story to it.
Definitely. And it's really interesting to see what was symbolic to them back in the day.
Yeah.
But one thing that I wanted to bring up, that I wanted to get your opinion on, was something that I was thinking about, was that we started out in our civilizations, in our early human society. We started out using these very primitive symbols, very primitive vocal, physical vocal
Yeah.
attributions, and we started that way because that's all we needed for our activities, our society.
Yeah.
It wasn't that far advanced. And then as you saw humanity evolve and become more and more complex, we've seen the need for an alphabet system, letters,
Yeah.
full words, stuff like that. Something, an observation that I found really interesting was I was thinking about today's form of communication and how we communicate in the 21st century. Something that's really big is emojis.
Yeah.
And memes and those visual representations of emotions and, activity, stuff like that. And I was wondering if, because of the complexity of today's society, there's so much going on, we're becoming more and more advanced. Where that
birthed the need to
simplify
be able
our
to
language,
convey emotions and things like that quicker,
which kind of divulges us back to where we started, which I thought was really an interesting thing.
There's a book called The Archaic Revival that's about that. Actually, it's like a return to the archaic way of doing things, like just like the early civilizations, they were obsessed with, well, not obsessed with, but that was a big thing that they did. They communicated through symbols, and they had, well, there's other stuff that it gets into, but
for sure,
if you want to check that book out, it's by Terence McKenna. But yeah, that's really interesting that we feel this need to communicate faster. Maybe it's a subconscious thing. People don't realize it, but everything is becoming quicker and quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
And we want to,
everything's so complex, and
we want people to understand us. So you can be joking, and if you type out a joke, maybe somebody doesn't perceive it as a joke, and they think you think they take your sarcasm as something serious, and they're offended. But then you put the little laughing emoji, and then it's all a big joke, and they can laugh about it.
So are you in that pool of you think that we will be simplifying our language and our communication?
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed, and I think that's a really positive thing too, because it makes things so that there's a lot less misunderstanding when it comes to interaction with other people.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I agree, and I don't know. I really like words. I think words are really beautiful.
Words are great.
I don't know.
But the thing is, like, words can be misconstrued, and maybe somebody doesn't have the...
But maybe that's the best part of words, that they can be interpreted in multiple different ways. When I think of literature and that sort of thing, I can lump that into...
I think the artistic aspect of it is great,
I think
but
it's fantastic.
Things like... what if you say something to another world leader, one says to the other, and the other one misinterprets what was being said and takes it as a declaration of war?
Yeah.
Then it's not so good.
You got to send the laughing emoji.
The artistic, you got to send hey, let's go to war. Ha, 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 ha.
It was just a big joke. It was just a meme, guys. I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think I think you can still move in that direction to where people can communicate visually and in that manner, rather than speaking, and still be able to write poetry, and those things aren't going to go away.
Do you think they'll become like a commodity?
What do you mean?
As far as like in comparison to like vinyl records, you know, it's like, well, I mean, you could listen to it on your streaming service, but or you could buy it.
I think there will always be a taste for it, you know,
for classic literature and writing.
And I think that this new method of communication, however it comes about, whenever it comes about, I think it could open up new doors for new artistic ways of communicating. So a new form of music, a new form of poetry that's different, and I think that would be cool.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that we will evolve past talking and the physical ability to?
I think so. I hope so, honestly.
Oh man,
I really do. I mean, I think that we'll still have the ability to speak. I don't think that'll just go away.
But I mean, if we stop using our physical, vocal attributes, then who's to say that we don't adapt without,
you think that eventually we lose that?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't use it,
we would probably use it for other things. Maybe we find a new use for it.
Interesting.
Maybe we come to a point where we can visualize sound, and that it becomes like a new,
some people have that
synesthesia.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Kanye
right?
has that. Lord has that, which I think is insane.
I think that is so cool, and I wish I had it.
I don't know how that could.
It's like a superpower.
I almost don't believe it. It's so cool. It's so weird to me.
I can believe it. I can totally believe it.
I believe it, but it's just so outlandish that
I wonder if it's a part of your brain that everybody has, but for some reason other people can access it easier.
I think, just like everything, diseases, and I mean, but they're there. It's just like,
because people that take ayahuasca or something like that, they say they can visualize sound.
That's true.
So maybe that's something that opens it up, and maybe those people have access to that kind of thing without, ayahuasca.
I would like that. That'd be cool.
It just adds a new dimension to everything. To see color and pattern in music, but with your eyes. I don't understand how that works, but that's so cool to me.
Oh yeah. So talking about colors and stuff, what's really interesting is that humanity has put meaning to things that, I mean, it's put meaning to everything.
Yeah.
When you think of the color black or darker colors, you can think evil, sinister.
Yeah.
Lighter colors are positive and happy, and that kind of goes into like the symbolism of the day.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because who decided that? Why do those make us feel those things?
I think
why does blue make people sad? Why does red make people angry? Why does
blue make? Oh, I guess so. I think,
or calm. There's different attributes.
I think we have some primitive natures to us, and I think that the
night, maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is because I'm sure we were afraid of the night before we just discovered fire. I mean, wouldn't you?
We don't have very good eyesight.
Some people are still afraid of the night, and it's 2017 here.
It's true. I need a nightlight.
Yeah, I need a nightlight. So I think that could be a trait that's been passed down.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Light and dark, but I mean, it's more of just like, well, then what about the colors in between? How does something make you feel calm?
I don't know.
It's a psychological thing.
I guess
I'm
so.
sure there's
color psychology. Yeah.
But yeah, there's lots of symbolism in our society, and so I mean, again, our first form of written language was all symbols.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how would you say symbolism has affected society's communication and passing through ideas?
Well, it's everywhere. Just like, I mean, your whole world is made up of language.
Yeah.
I mean, you use language to perceive everything, which is amazing to think about what life could have been without language, how life would have been like. But
could we have ever gotten here without language?
no, not a chance. We have to be able to collaborate with each other and understand what,
Sure.
A lot of, the Wright brothers had to talk to each other in order to make the airplane.
Sure.
So, but yeah,
Could we have survived?
we wouldn't have the society.
We wouldn't be sending
that we
rockets
have
to
now.
the moon. But I
No.
think if we look at dinosaurs, they like if we had
Because we created mathematics too,
yeah.
And that had to come. You had to have some kind of linguistic knowledge in order
For
to
sure.
to come up with the concepts of mathematics.
So if we had just developed like basic human like grunts like the poo poo and ya ding and those sorts of things, how far would we have gotten?
I think it'd be a lot like what you see in third world countries that are just like in Myanmar, the people that have to go out on their canoe and slap the water to get their fish and bring it home to their village. Like we probably would still have that, but even then,
But could we even organize villages? Because language
think
played.
so.
I mean, language played an integral role in organization,
True.
procedural things, hierarchy. I mean, I don't know if we could have coexisted for.
maybe we wouldn't
I mean,
have
we-
come to the development of agriculture. Maybe we would have stayed nomadic and hunter-gatherer lifestyle.
I think humanity would definitely survive. I mean, thinking about like
I think that we'd survive.
adaptations that
We're pretty resilient,
animals had. Animals don't need fire. Mm-hmm.
but they survive.
But they survive. So certainly in the evolutionary line, if we hadn't have just discovered
But
that, I'm sure we'd
I
have
will
some
say
sort of
our
adaptation.
population would not be nearly as high as it is today.
No, I don't think
Because,
we would
you know,
have these complex
we have modern
topics.
medicine.
Yeah, I don't think we'd have that.
We have all this stuff that keeps us alive. We have vitamins.
Yeah.
We can take vitamins.
We'd probably stay nomadic
yeah,
and,
we just have shorter lives
and small tribes.
Yeah, it wouldn't
very
be as
interesting.
complex as it is today.
And I don't think humanity would have lasted as long because we probably would have.
You think we would have died by now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, maybe not through one ice age, but as different diseases and
I think
different climate, I think we would.
I think
maybe.
that we probably would actually survive, possibly, depending on how we go and our path from here forward, survive longer than we may survive.
Oh, really?
Because we also wouldn't have developed all these things that emit all this CO2 into the
No
atmosphere,
nukes.
and we wouldn't have developed nuclear weapons and all these things that could bring about
But-
our own destruction.
But without the ability to communicate, factoring in that, let's say, factions of early humanity split off, without the ability to communicate, articulate complex ideas, I feel like it would be hard to cooperate.
They probably would have been warring all the time. They would have been.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe they would just wipe each other out without.
I don't think
the
they could
idea-
wipe each other out though.
Well, why not?
With that primitive tech, I don't think they could wipe out all of humanity. It would take
But
something like.
they hunted big animals. Why can't they hunt a human being?
Well, yeah, they can hunt other humans,
That's what I'm saying.
but I
It's
don't
just
think they
like-
could hunt themselves to extinction.
Well, just like war and. I mean, wars have ended societies, completely eradicated them from the face of the planet. So it's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know.
But we
it's
also would
something
have
think
to
about.
be able to get to the other side of the globe in our lifetime.
That's true.
So-
But they, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a very good point.
So I don't think we would have died out. It probably would have just never progressed. We would have
Yeah.
stayed the same. But humans must have some kind of path on this earth for us to have gone as far as we have so far. So
We've gotten a really lucky break so far. Let's see if we can keep it up. We've only been here for
a blink.
a blink in
blip.
the eye.
Yeah.
But let's hope that we don't screw it up with our big chimp technology.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, going back to symbolism and starting primitive written language with primarily symbols, how would you compare that to today? Like, I mean, how has symbolism affected our modern society?
Well, I started talking about it earlier, but I kind of went off. But the thing is, people don't realize it because it's so part of everyday life.
Yeah.
But symbols are everywhere you look. Everywhere.
Colors can be symbols. It doesn't have to be just a logo too. I think that's something that is commonly like a misconception.
They range from really mundane things and they all the way up to religious symbols and patriotic symbols. Yeah. Uh-huh. And I think that I don't think there's a problem with symbolism, but I think there's a big problem with the way that we attach to symbolic things.
Yeah.
Because we'll look at, I mean, I could apply any kind of amount of meaning to anything. I mean, I could say that this glass right here is worth more than anything to me, and I have this emotional connection to this glass. Somebody shatters the glass, and my whole world is shattered. But if somebody shatters the glass, I think people, I mean, this is indicative of what other people go through. I have to realize that this glass is just a piece of glass.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody...
You gotta detach emotions from it.
Yeah, this is a drastic example, but a big thing that would offend a lot of people is the American flag burning. That would be... I mean, people would just be in an uproar about it. But burning the American flag isn't something that... When they do that, it doesn't harm the nation itself. The only harm that can come is what people do after that. Yeah. And on either side of whoever's burning it and whoever's watching them burn it. So you just have to remember that these things are just, I mean, that's just a piece of fabric with some colors on it at the end of the day. It doesn't have to invoke this emotional response from people. Yeah. Same thing with religious symbols as well.
So can symbolism be a positive thing?
Yeah, I don't think that, like I said, I don't think symbolism is just like this horrible, evil thing. I think that it can be really good because if you can recognize that these things aren't
directly emotionally attached to you.
Yeah, like if you realize they aren't you. You're not the American flag. You're an American and you can enjoy living in America.
And still be patriotic.
And still have patriotism and all of that, but and just seeing these things, you give it more power whenever you have such an emotional response to it. The people that do these things to these symbols, they're looking for an emotional response.
Yeah. And
you give them that satisfaction, whereas you can take the power out of the act completely by not responding to it whatsoever.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you just realize that that's just a piece of fabric, that's just a glass, you know, then you can enjoy all of the benefits of symbolism without all of the negative aspects of it.
So with that mindset, do you think that we can control our interpretations of symbolism?
I think so.
I mean, a lot of it's fed to us at an early age. We study textbooks with tons of symbolism. We're taught with curriculum with tons of symbolism. Our parents teach us symbolism. Yeah.
People just need to be able to recognize symbolism more. Just recognize that this is not what people say it is. You know, what people have identified it as. They just say, you know, this is just this is symbolic of this, but it doesn't. If something happened to that, it wouldn't take away the power of those emotions or that aspect that you're so attached to.
Yeah.
You won't get so upset all the time. You can relax, and it's not easy because you also have to realize that these things can manipulate you so well. If you subscribe to a certain person or their ideas and they say, okay, I am a part of the Republican Party or I'm a part of the Democratic Party or whatever it may be. And at that point, if they can demonize the other symbol, and then everybody that associates themselves with that symbol is an SJW, socialist, whatever, or a white trash, corporate, greedy hillbilly, or, you know, whatever it is.
Exactly,
So you just can't fall for that because it's not so black and white. People need to communicate more. The whole topic is communication.
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that would be, I think it's important to especially if you are born into a curriculum, or you go through an educational system that promotes this, and that, it's really hard to interpret things other ways. And, symbolism especially. And so I think personally, it's important to get an outside perspective.
Yes.
Look at both sides. Mm-hmm. I think that really can be the biggest, I guess, catalyst for change. Positive change when it comes to interpretation of not only just symbolism, but other forms of communication and just people in general.
Yeah, people need to be able to walk in another person's shoes more and understand why people have come to the conclusions that they have.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's because that's how these people grew up, and they never got out of their own culture. Yeah. And they just kind of...
I mean, you see it all over media. You see it everywhere. It's a really a hard mindset. All forms of media too. It's a hard mindset to break. Yeah. I think,
People get pitted against each other in really small scale things and then really large scale things. So, yeah. I mean, you can say, I'm a PlayStation fanboy and I'm an Xbox fanboy. They go at each other, or Samsung and Apple. It's a big fight, but it's not a big. It's small scale compared to like a U.S. versus Russia. It's the same thing though, and when you put things like that and you make these divides and social constructs, then people can look at Russia and just say, oh, all those people are terrible people, and it dehumanizes people, and you don't see them as somebody that's just like you see them as Russian whatever, or from the other side they could look at Americans and see us as like the bad guy, the villain.
So do you think symbolism has contributed in any way to the divisiveness of our society today?
Absolutely. Just based on everything that I just said, everybody like attaches to a certain brand or whatever it is. And like I said, you can enjoy the brands that you like, and just like, I love Dr. Pepper, sure, but I don't have to hate Coke and anybody who hates Coke, like it doesn't.
Dr. Pepper
or Pepsi and Coke, that's the one, right? It's not like you can enjoy all of the things. You can recognize the brands and the things that you like without having to demonize the other side or everything that everybody does outside of whatever you're doing,
I agree.
So just recognizing that would probably help us move in a better direction.
Definitely.
But who am I?
Don't listen to us. Make up your own mind.
Yeah, for real.
That's important.
The primacy of immediate experience. That's what that's called.
Really?
Yeah, just making your own experience and things primary rather than listening to everybody else and just taking whatever somebody else gives you for fact.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially, it kind of goes back to the education that we were just talking about, but we grow up in this very authoritarian, you look up to your authorities, you look up to your elders,
idolize people.
You idolize. Yeah, I mean, and
which
you don't know any different.
That's one of the biggest things Western culture is supposed to be against with Judeo-Christian beliefs and all that. Yeah. You're not supposed to idolize anybody except for Jesus. Yeah. And yet people will idolize all kinds of people. Well, singers, politicians.
It's really not advocating, at least in my worldview, it's not advocating against idolization. It's advocating against selective idolization.
That's true, because
it's just saying
you just can't idol anybody else.
Exactly. So it's really not teaching us.
That's a funny way to look at it.
Anyway, I mean, it's more of that. That's kind of a gray area, but
that's why I think that, and somebody's going to be mad when they hear this, but I'm
mad already.
That's why I think that religious symbols, you have to take these things as symbols. Yeah. Like Jesus needs to be a symbol. If Jesus is the perfect way to live, a moral and just way to live, the way he lived, loving and all that stuff, then that's what you need to follow. Not the person, not whatever else, just live the same way as whatever these things are, I guess choose your idols carefully. If you have to choose idols, I say don't choose idols.
Yeah, I advocate against that because that just leads to.
Or if you do have to choose
deception.
idols, choose dead ones, because at least then we can, they've been tested, like Plato.
There's
They've
some
been
dead
tested.
idols that are people.
Oh, yeah, I
people
know.
idolize that are pretty weird.
But if you're idolizing people today, you don't know how history is going to look back on those people. We can look back on Plato and say, hey, he wasn't a bad guy.
Sure.
So you can live like Plato,
But I mean, bad and
still
good
be
is
decent.
also subjective. People think Adolf Hitler is a fantastic guy, and he's dead.
Yeah, but I think
It's all
that
subjective.
when you boil it all down, that's the whole question of where do your morals come from.
Yeah.
I think when you boil it all down, it's really just how are your actions and the things that you're doing impacting the rest of the world? Is it in a way that hurts other people? And hurt is something everyone can understand. Everyone can understand sadness and hurt. But if you're putting that out there and that's what you're inflicting on other people, then I'd say that's where you discover morality, is how are you, that sort of thing.
Yeah. With that being said, make sure to check out the description for some awesome resources on all the things that we've talked about today. Make up your own mind and let us know what you think. As always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.